And where's the emergency?
Somebody just fixing the door in apartment 304.
We heard something that sounded like gunshots.
Ashley Jones, by all accounts, was a fiery busybody. Petite, but mighty and full of energy. Always been the life of the party, a very warm personality, and a social butterfly. Any and everybody loved to be around Ashley. She always had a smile on her face, and she was always ready for a turn-up. Ashley was your typical teenager, going to school, spending time with family and friends. And then in 2009, when she was 16 years old, she met a guy by the name of Jeffrey Holland, originally from East Orange, New Jersey. Jeffrey at the time was 20 years old. Jeffrey came off very charming to Ashley, and he swept her off her feet. And by all accounts, the couple fell in love with each other rather quickly, which fueled the relationship to become serious soon after they started dating. And in 2011, Ashley at 18 moved from home to live with Jeffrey, who was 22 at the time, and they both were pretty ecstatic about this next step in their dynamic. Well, they were clearly enjoying this phase of their lives because in the following year, 2012, at 19, Ashley became pregnant with their first child together. And that same year, they were blessed with the gift of their baby boy. And 2 years later, in 2014, Ashley, 21, and Jeffrey, 25, welcomed their second child together. And this time, a beautiful baby girl. And anybody who knew Ashley, they vouched for her, that she was an amazing, loving, and protective mom. Her whole world revolved around her children. Unfortunately, Ashley and Jeffrey's whirlwind romance had come to a silent calm, and eventually the two drifted apart. So Ashley got herself together and she moved out the apartment that she shared with Jeffrey and got her own in Newark, New Jersey for her and their children. And one day in 2015, 22-year-old Ashley went clothing shopping for her children. When she was in the girls' clothing aisle, she and a man named Jarrell Marshall, 27, caught each other's eye. They started conversing about the girls' clothing and started talking about their daughters and their ages. And Jarrell shared that he wasn't with his daughter's mom, but they did share custody and they didn't have any bad blood in between them. So the pair started to hang out more. They had play dates with their children, and soon after, the play dates turned into real adult dates for them. Ashley had found love again, for real this time. She couldn't help but to tell everyone that was close to her how happy she was. She even told them how she and Jarrell had serious conversations about marriage. Shortly after dating, Jarrell had moved into Ashley's apartment with her and her children.
Did you see the person?
Nah, I ain't seen nobody.
Did you see anybody run out the door or? No.
On Saturday night, January 30th, 2016, police were called to a building due to the sound of a woman screaming, followed by gunshots. When police arrived, residents say they didn't see anyone leave, so they weren't able to provide a description, but the shots came from apartment 304. They also heard some kids screaming out, "Mommy, mommy." The door to the apartment had been kicked in, and when police came into the apartment, they found both Ashley and Jarrell shot to death in their bedroom. Police were able to identify the bodies as Ashley and Jarrell because they had found their IDs. Also in the apartment were Ashley's 4-year-old son and 1-year-old daughter, as well as Jarrell's 3-year-old daughter. Police spoke to the neighbors to see if they could tell them anything about the victims that can help with any leads in the case. The neighbors had explained that just a week prior they had heard a man outside yelling and screaming, but when they went to look, they didn't see who the man was, but they did see Ashley into the hallway with a black eye and looking disheveled. Ashley chose not to disclose who the man was that did that to her. Neighbors said that the same voice was the same one that they heard right before the shooting had happened. This clearly let the police know that whoever it was that assaulted Ashley just a week prior is probably, more than likely, the same person that shot and killed her and Jarrell. Police moved on to the next steps of their investigation and decided they'd probably get some answers by looking at the surveillance in the building. So police got hold of the building management and asked to view their cameras. On the surveillance, detectives saw a man in the lobby and the stairwell of the building. What was so suspicious was the way the suspect had came in and left the building. They knew the suspect had to have known Ashley because when he walked into the building, he could be seen in the surveillance walk over toward the mailboxes, go straight for Ashley's mailbox, flip it open, and then walk up the stairs to Ashley's apartment. As he was leaving the building, he could be seen running down the stairs shortly after the shots were fired, and he was running so fast that he missed the lobby and almost went down to the basement. Detectives were trying to identify the suspect's face but were unsuccessful because he was wearing a mask. However, they were able to see what he was wearing clearly: a black North Face jacket, green cargo pants, and a red hoodie with red gloves. Detectives were trying to understand what were the backgrounds of this couple. Maybe they were wrapped up in some sort of criminal activity. So they decided to do background checks of Ashley and Jarrell, but nothing came up. Squeaky clean. As the detectives were trying to figure things out, a woman came running into the building, screaming and hollering and asking about where her child was, because she had heard about the shooting and she knew her child was with her daddy, Jarrell, in the building. Police had the hard job of telling her that while her daughter was just fine and at the hospital for medical clearance, Jarrell sadly didn't make it. Police asked her about her relationship with Jarrell to pick her brain and see if there could be any animosity there or any motives at all to want to hurt Ashley and Jarrell. The woman explained that while she had no tension with Jarrell nor Ashley, and that in fact her co-parenting relationship with Jarrell was a healthy one, she had made a shocking claim. The woman told police that they might want to set their sights on none other than Ashley's ex and father to her children, Jeffrey Holland. The woman explained that Jarrell used to tell her all the time how Jeffrey caused major havoc in their lives. Now, at this point, it's unclear how the detectives got a hold of Jeffrey's number because they hadn't looked into Jeffrey's background yet at this point. Possibly maybe looking through Ashley's phone. I really don't know. However, police were able to get in contact with Jeffrey via phone and told him what happened to Ashley and that he needed to come and pick up his kids from the hospital. Thankfully, the hospital had medically cleared the children. Jeffrey went to go pick up his children and the detectives met him there. The detectives told Jeffrey they needed to speak to him at the station to rule him out as a suspect. So Jeffrey made some arrangements for the kids and went to the station the next morning. When Jeffrey sat down with detectives, they asked Jeffrey if he had any issues with Ashley, remembering what Jarrell's daughter's mother had told them the previous day. And Jeffrey told the detectives that yes, him and Ashley did have some tension between them, and they had broke up over a year before this all happened. However, he ensured that regardless to their issues, he had nothing to do with Ashley's murder. In fact, Jeffrey said he had never even touched a gun or owned one in his life, let alone shoot one. He also ensured that he hadn't been in contact with Ashley nor Jarrell and hadn't been to her apartment in over a month. Detectives took a break from the questions, and at this point is when they decided to go and run a background check on Jeffrey. This is when they made the shocking discovery that Jeffrey had a long rap sheet for harassment and sexual violence. He also had an outstanding warrant in East Orange for assault. In their discoveries, they found an order of protection against him that was filed by Ashley. He was served with the order of protection in the middle of January 2016, just a week and a half before her death. With an active, outstanding warrant, police had the ability to hold Jeffrey in custody while they did more investigating to put the pieces together of this horrific crime. One of the first people detectives went to interview was Ashley's mother. They asked her if she knew anyone who would want to hurt Ashley, and her mom said with a straight face, "Yeah, that would be Jeffrey." She told detectives that Jeffrey had made threats to Ashley before to physically hurt her. She also told them that Ashley and Jeffrey's relationship wasn't always bad. She said actually it started off really good, but then one day Ashley called her crying and screaming that Jeffrey had hit her and she was going to call the police. Ashley's mom said that Jeffrey at some point became very controlling and he began to beat on Ashley quite often. Even Ashley's friends attested to this and said that Jeffrey would come to Ashley's house often under the guise of coming to see his children, but then he would end up beating on Ashley, cursing her out, abusing her. There was even a time Ashley had ran out of the fire escape to get away from Jeffrey's grasp. Ashley held on to the relationship for as long as she could for the kids because in her mind, she didn't want to raise their children in a single-parent home without their dad in the home, but enough was enough. And finally, she left. That's when Ashley went on and moved into her own place. When Ashley moved out, Jeffrey would blow up her phone every single day, harassing her. But after a while, the harassment ceased when Jeffrey met another young lady by the name of Tiniquah Rouse, who was 18 at the time. When Jeffrey met Tiniquah, he became distracted and enamored in her and their new relationship. So essentially, he began to leave Ashley alone. And Ashley caught wind that Jeffrey was with someone new. It was a breath of fresh air for her. She felt like she was finally free, thinking he's someone else's responsibility now. Shortly after finding this out is when Ashley felt like she too could finally find a new love, which is when she met Jarrell while they were shopping for their children. And by all accounts, Jarrell was a breath of fresh air. He adored Ashley and her children. He treated them all so well. But Jeffrey wasn't like Ashley. He hated hearing about Ashley in a new relationship. And in fact, it enraged him. He just couldn't handle the thought of his children's mother being in love with someone else, even though he mistreated her and was with a whole different woman at this point. Ashley's mom told detectives that a few weeks before the murder, Ashley told her about how Jeffrey beat her up and he gave her a black eye. This coincided with what the neighbors had told the police on the night of the murder. And fast forward shortly after that is when she obtained the order of protection against Jeffrey. At this point, detectives felt they were sure that Jeffrey was guilty. However, they needed more solid evidence that would make it all come together. Now, simultaneously, while all of this is going on, in the very same police station that detectives are investigating Ashley and Jarrell's case, there was an ongoing investigation of a 19-year-old young woman who was found murdered in her apartment, where she was found with strangulation marks and drowned in the tub in her own apartment. She was found by a close friend, and this happened on January 29, 2016, one day before Ashley and Jarrell's murders. While going over the surveillance at the building of the 19-year-old girl's murder, the detectives on Ashley and Jarrell's case was walking past and just so happened to get a glimpse of the man and the other detectives' surveillance. The detectives asked if they could run the footage back of the man at the 19-year-old girl's building, and sure enough, the man at the scene of the crime was none other than Jeffrey HOLLAND. The 19-year-old that was murdered was his girlfriend and child's mother, Tiniquah Rouse, the girl who initially stole his attention long enough to leave Ashley alone for a little while. When police found Tiniquah, they knew it was a homicide because of the nature of the crime scene. They also found her 5-month-old baby boy in the closet where Jeffrey put him. Thankfully, he was unharmed. Detectives were able to get search warrants for Jeffrey's phone in his apartment, so they went through his phone first and found 2 photos of Tiniquah in the bathtub, which obviously placed Jeffrey at her apartment at the time of her murder. When police searched his apartment, they found green cargo pants, red gloves, and a ski mask, which is exactly what they saw the man wearing in the surveillance at Ashley's building. They didn't find a gun, but they did find .40 caliber ammunition that matched the shell casings at the crime scene of Ashley's house, and they also found a holster and a magazine for a handgun. The irony behind that, when he said he never even owned or touched a gun before. Detectives decided to go talk to Jeffrey while in holding. When they reached him, Jeffrey wanted to know what was going on and when was he going to be getting out of there. They told Jeffrey that they knew about Tiniquah and they wanted him to come clean. Jeffrey tried to act like he didn't know her, but they showed him the surveillance of him leaving her apartment. That's when he made up a story about what happened between them. Jeffrey said in the middle of him and Tiniquah having sex, that Tiniquah, out of nowhere, started shaking uncontrollably. He said her eyes rolled in the back of her head, saying she caught a seizure in the middle of them having sex. However, the autopsy had no mention of a possible seizure. The cause of Tiniquah's death was strangulation and drowning. Detectives had all they needed to charge Jeffrey for Tiniquah's murder, but the evidence they had against him for Ashley and Jarrell was only circumstantial. They needed more to charge him with Ashley and Jarrell's case. Then, by a streak of luck, detectives received a phone call from Ashley's mother. She told them that Ashley's oldest son, the 4-year-old, told her that he actually seen Jeffrey murder his mother. He said he didn't say anything before because he was scared, but now he felt more safe speaking about it. At this point, with Ashley's oldest son's statement, detectives had more than enough. They had solid evidence. And in January 2016, Jeffrey was charged with the murders of Ashley Jones and Jarrell Marshall.
Police say they have the man behind a violent murder spree that left 3 people dead. Murders that happened with children inside the homes. And good evening at 5 o'clock. I'm Diana Williams.
And I'm Bill Ritter in for Sade. 2 of the people were shot and killed. The other was strangled.
The accused killer, Jeffrey Holland, is now being held on $2.5 million bail. And we know that one victim had a restraining order against him.
Eyewitness News reporter Michelle Charlesworth in Newark at the police station there with the lead story tonight. Michelle.
Well, this is so awful. 4 children ranging in age from 5 months to 4 years were present, police tell me, when these murders took place. And now they are left without parents. Mayor Ras Baraka spoke late this afternoon, calling the situation this murder suspect created on the streets of Newark unbearable.
We are thankful that this person has been taken off of the streets.
The mayor expressed relief that this man, 27-year-old Jeffrey Holland, was off of Newark streets. Holland faces charges for allegedly killing 2 women and 1 man. The first murder, police say, was Friday night. 21-year-old Tiniquah Rouse was strangled. She may have had the presence of mind to hide her baby boy in a closet before she was attacked.
They also found in a closet her 5-month-old son, who thankfully was unharmed.
The next 2 murders, police say, were Saturday night. The 23-year-old mother of 2 of the suspect's children was killed. Her name was Ashley Jones, and she had a restraining order against Holland. Her new partner, Janelle Marshall, 28, was also shot to death. 2 little girls, 1 and 3 years old, and 1 boy, 4, were in the apartment at the time, and like the 5-month-old, were not physically hurt. The acting county prosecutor admits if someone is bent on doing harm, there is little they can do to protect women from abusers.
When someone is intent, for whatever their own reasons are, on committing an act of violence, the restraining order itself cannot obviously stop somebody willing to go so far as aggravated assault or murder or firearms type murder from committing that act.
Again, 3 murders, 4 children physically unhurt but left tonight without their parents. This murder suspect is being held on $2.5 million bail.
Being that there was an order of protection against Jeffrey and he violated that, he had a combined bail set at $2.5 million, which included the $1.5 million for the murders of Ashley and Jarrell. Jeffrey had to go to trial. During his trial, in front of Judge Ronald Wigler, Jeffrey argued that he had nothing to do with Ashley and Jarrell's death. However, he claimed the death of Tiniquah was an accident. He told the judge the same thing he told the detectives, that Tiniquah had a seizure in the middle of sex. He also said he got nervous and tried to wash Tiniquah's vagina out with soap and water. And to try to seal the deal, he inserted a hot curling iron in her vagina and another one in her anus. Assistant Prosecutor Justin Edward argued that Jeffrey even took cell phone photos of Tiniquah's body in the tub. The medical examiner found water in Tiniquah's sinuses, consistent with a drowning. It was also discovered that Jeffrey had been searching for New Jersey state laws on murder and evidence needed for a conviction. The assumption being he was trying to avoid getting caught up. While he had admitted to there being some tension with Ashley about their children and their personal relationship, he claimed to not even had known about their murders until he got to the hospital. However, The assistant prosecutor argued that Jeffrey's text messages told a different story. Quote, "The way I move, I'd rather just eliminate both of them out the picture," end quote, was one of the texts found in Jeffrey's phone to a friend of his. On December 12, 2018, Jeffrey was convicted. The jury found him guilty of 18 counts, including 3 counts of murder, desecration of human remains, hindering, felony murder, burglary, theft, weapons possession, and multiple counts of endangering the welfare of a child. On February 26, 2019, the judge sentenced Jeffrey to 60 years per murder, plus an additional 10 years for weapons charge, totaling a whopping 190-year sentence with ineligibility for parole for 158 years. Now, while doing my investigations and research on the story, I came upon some information that as recently as January of this year, Jeffrey has put in an appeal for his charges. As per law.justia.com, on January 12, 2022, Jeffrey appealed his conviction for 3 first-degree murders and related charges and his sentence. And on February 14, 2022, a decision was made that the conviction was affirmed but remanded for resentencing of certain counts. The grand jury did return 3 indictments against Jeffrey. So in conclusion for the appeal, I'm not sure what this means for Jeffrey's sentencing. I looked high and low for any new sentencing information, but I couldn't find anything. I feel very concerned for the families of Ashley, Jarrell, and Tiniquah. I'm wondering if they know anything about this appeal, and will they have to deal with another earth-shattering disappointment with any new sentencing that may come. All in all, the people who suffer the worst are all the children involved. All of Jeffrey's children will grow up without either of their parents because their mother's lives were viciously snuffed out and their father is in jail. And another little girl will grow up without her father because he too lost his life for no reason. This is a cautionary tale of a calloused, sociopathic, egotistical, hot-headed, controlling, obsessive, dangerous man who just couldn't imagine losing his grip on one woman whilst losing all control of his emotions with another, which ultimately cost them their lives. And then there's Jarrell, who is just collateral damage due to his position in Ashley and her children's lives. I'm sending immense prayers of healing still to the families and the loved ones of the victims in this story. If you or anyone you know needs help in a domestic violence situation, please utilize the information. Rest in peace, Ashley Jones, Jarrell Marshall, and Tiniquah Rouse.